You are in for such an amazing episode. I had the opportunity to connect with a very dear friend of mine. He's been my friend for over 25 years. He has had the most intense healing journey, and I can't wait for him to share it with you. But more importantly, he's one of the amazing speakers at our upcoming Life After Loss virtual retreat, which will be taking place this month, September 17th through the 20th. I want to personally invite you to learn more about from him and be able to ask him burning questions in his Q&A session. There will also be a VIP event where he'll be talking to us about taboo talks during grief, where we take a deeper dive and discuss areas around grief that no one wants to talk about. Murder, suicide, drug overdose. So be sure to take a moment and click the link in the description below and find out more about the free ticket to the Life After Loss virtual retreat. Lucas Guidroz was high on heroin and in a week into a rage, drug, and alcohol binge when his car hit a 53-year-old bicycler, killing him instantly. While he saw the crumpled body on the road and immediately knew what he had done, he floored it. He later turned himself into the police and was convicted on a hit and run manslaughter charge. Hello, friends. Welcome to Healing Starts with the Heart. I have an amazing guest here for you, and it is Lucas's father, Ken Guidroz. And I also would like to introduce you to my personal friend. Ken has written a beautiful book called Letters to My Son in Prison. And we're going to do a two-part series on the grief that occurred with this life-changing, altering event, and then how they rebuilt their relationship together. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
And I was just going over all the questions. There's so many areas that I would love to go in on this interview, but I think the first part that we need to start on, because we've laid out what happened, I really want to know when you first found out, when you got that first call, what was it like?
It was really early in the morning. So Lucas did flee, and it took a couple days to turn himself in, which is its own misfortune, but that's nonetheless what happened. And then once he did, it was my youngest son that brought him to the police station and dropped him off, then drove to our house about 6 in the morning. And it was, of course, surreal when anything like that happens in your family. It was the culmination of 10 years, really, in some ways 15 years, but certainly 10 acute years of struggling. Me as a dad struggling with not just Lucas, but each of my sons at different periods, two of them with opioids and the other with just being an all-around knucklehead. And all the other things that went along with that. So, it was dramatic. I mean, my wife wanted to talk to Chris a lot. Weirdly, I just heard and processed it, asked some questions, and then came straight up to this office, sitting where I'm sitting right now, got online to see who this teacher was that he had killed and what the news was saying about it, because it was already out a lot. And then it just welled up in me. And even though I was alone here in my office, I felt this weird desire to be alone in some place that was dark. So I went downstairs into my garage, and the second the door closed behind me, I just completely broke down and just cried into the darkness of the garage. It was still early. I prayed for the man. I don't know, what do you pray for a guy that's already dead, right? So that's weird. I did pray for his widow. I remember that vividly. I even knew her name at the time, Valerie. But I didn't pray for Lucas. I was completely done praying for him, and felt nothing but anger towards him at that point. And it was the darkest day of my life.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Ken, you are and were a pillar in the community. You were my pastor, and I actually have a story I'm going to end this interview with. I don't know if you changed my life, but I'm going to share it. How did knowing like just having all the eyes on the Guidroz family. How did that impact the situation?
That was painful. Of course, before this, when you and I were in the same church, a church
Yeah.
that I was leading, it was awkward. It was weird. I don't know how much you remember, but you know, at first, as my sons hit adolescence, I re-entered the ministry, right, to lead the Santa Clarita group, and naively just didn't realize the challenge that adolescents would have on my family. And then, it went really well for a year or so, and it was great. But then it started to slowly, things started to happen. Jess decided not to be part of my oldest decided not to be part of the teen group anymore, which I think I handled well. I write about that. It was a talk at In and Out with Burgers, and he said, "Hey, I don't want to be a hypocrite, and I can't do this." And I was like, "You know what? You can't be a hypocrite. This is between you and God." So that period was awkward as the pastor, because now your oldest son's no longer part of things. Then my second son decided he wasn't going to be part of things, and then things started to spin. And so yes, that was really, really embarrassing, to be honest with
Yeah.
you, challenging. And then when this happened, that was up to that point, it was really unknown, but then it happened. And I felt like a pariah. I felt like I had a scarlet letter, and a lot of that was self-inflicted. I remember I was at LA Fitness, and I played a lot of racquetball at the time, and four of my buddies stepped out of the court, and I was raging. I was raging. I was lifting weights way more than I should. Trust me, I don't lift much weight. Yeah, you're immediately going, wait, you lift weight? I never do that. And I remember being at the faucet, drinking water, and they got out of the court and they started talking to each other. And I thought they were talking about me, and they looked over, and I thought they were looking at me. And, I just started creating all these scenarios in my head, and just raging, and just wanting to scream at them, wanting to scream at God, wanting to scream at myself, wanting to scream at myself, you know what I mean? Just scream at everybody. And it was that moment in that gym, it was kind of beautiful, because I went back to lifting weights, and I know there's probably more detail than you want, but I went back to lifting weights, and I just started, adrenaline was flowing,
Yeah.
testosterone was flowing, and I just was in the worst place. And then I remember putting the barbell down, and I turned around, and this friend of mine, Jack, was there standing right in front of me. And he just reached over, and he stepped up, and he actually hugged me. This is a guy that doesn't hug. And he just hugged me, and he leaned into me, and he goes, if you need anything from me, let me know. Because his son too, a couple of years before, had struggled and had been in the papers and had been in embarrassment. And Jack was a much higher profile guy than me, and he knew how I was feeling. So yeah, it was a tough time.
Did you identify it as a grieving experience? Yes, the family were grieving, but did you identify it that you and your boys and your wife were grieving? Would you
I,
have called it that back
I
then?
not a chance.
Yeah.
I I was just wild
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
emotion, right? I
Yeah.
Here I am imagining all these things and creating these scenarios, you know, like completely irrational. Did I know I was being irrational? I don't even know if I knew I was being irrational.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was just being what I was being. So no,
Yeah.
no, I
One of the things that I teach in the program is that there are 45 or more known losses that can cause a grieving experience in our heart, and it's a loss of any kind, right? And that was a major loss for your family. Ken, at some point you said I insisted that Luke be held accountable for his action, and I refused to post bail. That decision there, tell me about the struggle on that decision. And did the rest of the family agree with you?
Most importantly, my wife did.
Yeah.
Because, there is a point as a parent of an addict where you just want relief.
Yeah.
You just want it to stop.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that an overdose and a death of my son would have been a relief, but I have heard that from other parents,
Yes.
and I get it, to be real honest with you. I
Yeah.
actually get it. As unbelievable as that may sound to some parents. So the fact that he was held up at LA County was a relief.
Yeah.
I mean, the thought of him with a manslaughter charge hanging over him, with a lifelong tendency to medicate, being out in our house.
Yeah.
Even my wife, who tended to, not want pain on him, she's like, "No, we ain't posting bail."
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not posting bail. So
Yeah.
I had my sons over. We talked about it that on a Saturday. So the four of us talked, my other sons, and everybody was in agreement, because that was early. Everything was fresh still. It was really fresh and really acidic, right? It was still very painful. So yeah, there was no question, no bail.
You say, I thought I was a good parent, right? You thought you were a good parent and you had these three beautiful boys. How did you process this pain?
Process what?
How did you process the pain? Like, here I am, this amazing family, and now this has happened. And I'm talking about that raw pain. What did you do with the raw pain? I understand what you did at the gym, but after that day at the gym, how did you continue with the pain?
Well, it's so layered, right? There's the parental shame of feeling like you were a good parent, meaning that you loved your sons, right? I mean, you know me.
Yeah.
I'm a knucklehead in some way, but I'm a decent dad, right? I'm not a weirdo. I didn't overwork. I didn't beat them. I didn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was a doggone pastor of a church. Come on. I I wasn't perfect by any stretch, but yeah, I mean, there's the parental disbelief.
Right.
And then there's the spiritual, because that too is there. I mean, that was almost more was, okay, here I put God first. I sacrificed.
Yeah.
I tried to put it out there. I left a career that was going really, really well. In fact, was peaking when I went back in the ministry. I'd just been promoted, and Hawaii had just been added to my territory. I had dreams.
You were traveling.
I was a traveling fool. So, but so going back in the ministry, leading this group, growing this church in this beautiful community we lived in, that I thought, okay, well, that's good. That's good. God's going to bless me. And then to have it just start to spiral, and then spiral more and spiral even more, and then just completely spin out of control. At one point, for about 3 or 4 years, it was before my oldest turned back around, and it was after my youngest had gotten involved in opioid use. There was a several year period. It was just as dark as it gets, only because as a parent, I failed. As a Christian, I failed. As a pastor, of course, that was not even a question. But on those two categories, I mean, who cares if your job's going well, right?
Yeah.
Who cares how your racquetball game's going?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I mean, on the two
100%.
biggies, they are completely in the toilet. They're not in the toilet. They've actually been flushed down the toilet.
Yeah.
And they're right.
Yeah.
I mean, with God, it was numb. With as a parent, I was like, I am out. I have no Joyce, you handle it, my wife, because I got, what am I going to say to anybody about anything about, you know what I mean? It was that, I was that despondent that, I mean, to think that I would be talking to you 10 years, 15 years later, like utterly unbelievable.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Right? Okay, friends, let's take a brief break right here. I want to share something with you. If you're grappling with the heavy weight of long-term grief, you know, the kind that feels like it's consuming every part of your life. And now that I say that, what grief doesn't feel like it's consuming every part of your life? I'm talking about the pain of losing someone you love that's affecting your zest for life, your energy, your relationships with your spouse, your parents, or your children. As a grief specialist, I want you to know that you're not alone on this healing journey. Grief can cast a long shadow, but there's a path for healing. There is a true path for healing. And I've designed something very special for you. I want you to take a look at you, the griever. My partner, Joy Renique of Celebrate Legacy, and I have curated a transformative 3-day retreat, especially for those who are suffering from grief after the loss of a loved one. Anyone trying to move towards healing. The best part is, it is completely free. The virtual retreat is called Life After Loss, and we've assembled a remarkable team of experts who truly understand your pain, your heartache, and your longing for healing. They are also true grievers, and they've been on this journey before you. They're not going to only share from their own experience, but they're going to give you a safe place to grieve. And they will educate you about the grieving healing journey and give you actionable steps to move towards healing. I will also be speaking at this event. And the topic of my subject is, does grief have an end? Don't let grief continue to hold you back. Take the courageous step towards healing right now. Just click the button, the link that I have in the show notes, to get your free ticket to the retreat. Your journey to healing begins with a single click. I can't wait to meet you virtually at the retreat, where together we'll take these first steps toward a brighter future. You can also head over to grieflegacy.net/retreat or click the link below in this podcast description to save your free tickets. Your path to healing is just a click away, my friend.
It was that much of a desert. And yeah, I was on autopilot at that point with God.
Yeah.
Opening the Bible, even just opening the Bible, just opening it on my desk would just, I'd read something and my mind would just fill with bad memories and defeats and dreams that ended, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And much less going to a church, where the same thing would happen. So yeah, it was as much a desert as I've ever felt ever in my life.
And you describe that so well, because that's exactly what every grieving person feels, especially if they're walking, right? They're walking with God, they're walking in their relationship. They go to the Bible, their heart is just broken. They're looking for answers, and they can't even read the words. The words are not even making sense. Then we turn and we go to the church thinking our friends and family are going to have the answer, and they're giving us scripture instead of the hug like Jack did, And so it becomes this, we get stuck.
It's a stuck situation. For me, you and other members of the church, quite honestly, we're fine with me. I don't begrudge the church. This is not a church. My experience personally was not I had some challenges at the church. They were with my higher ups. They were with other issues, but the people themselves loved me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't go there to see them just because it reminded me of everything. It reminded me of failures. And then it became, what they believed, I just didn't believe anymore. So it was multi-layered. I had to figure out what I believed. And of course, that's a whole nother journey we can talk about later. But it was this opening of the past that just, it's like a flock of birds. All these memories came back, and it's like, why would I do that? Why would I expose myself to that?
Yeah.
It just brings me back to, it's so funny in tragedy and trauma and grief. It's so funny how quickly you can go back. Even my wife and I, we got to be careful, because one thing can trigger. We started watching a movie last night, Shawshank Redemption. How stupid of me. A movie about prison. Right here when we're launching this book. And I was like, we were 3 minutes into it. I go, Joyce, I said, we had just paid $3.99 for the movie. I said, can't watch it. She goes, honey, thank you
Gotcha.
for saying that, because I can't watch it either.
Yeah.
Because it's just going to bring everything back. It's
Yeah.
already tough enough to bring out a book about our past.
Yeah.
And Joyce 2 nights ago didn't even sleep because she's thinking about all this stuff. We want to, and we love being able to talk about our grief and
Yes.
how we went from A to B.
Yes.
But it's hard. It's
It
not
is
so hard
hard.
for me. I sleep better just because
Yeah.
I don't know. It almost is redemptive to me. It's helpful. To Joyce, it just brings it all back. And so it's hard.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's funny in grief, you can go from 0 to 60.
Yes.
You're back
Seconds, and you're right back
in
there.
seconds.
What I love about your gut-wrenching, honest conversations that we're having is that there's other grievers out there that are hearing this, and you're describing it exactly how they're feeling right now, and you're giving them hope. You're giving them hope, Ken, that they're going to find peace. At some point, you find peace. And so we're going to talk about that in the next one. This is a 2-part series, friends.
I
How
say
about
it should be
blame?
4 parts. No, I'm just teasing. Just teasing.
We should just keep going. How much blame did you put on yourself in the early stages? And were you able to work through that if you had any?
Okay, I'm going to sound like a total asshole here. So
Okay, go
let me
ahead.
preface my comment with that. Asshole alert. Okay, I mean, I take some blame. I made some mistakes.
Yeah.
Weirdly though, Sharon, I didn't really crystallize my mistakes till a couple years ago, writing this book.
Yeah.
It was talking to my sons, all 3 of them. Hey, I remember this time. Jess, remember when we went to In-N-Out and you told me you weren't going to be part of the church? Oh, yeah. I said, I just wrote that scene. And how do you remember it? You know, another time he wanted to go to the winter formal, and I said, no. And I said, how do you remember that? This is what I remember. And I gave him the scene, and, you know, he commented. And it was those. And I go, you know, that was kind of a tipping point, wasn't it? He goes, yeah, that's when I ran away. And I go, that's right. You ran away that night. You left for 2 nights. And you know what I mean? I didn't realize the mistakes. I knew I had made mistakes, but I didn't realize exactly what they were until really writing all of this stuff. And then realizing, man, I didn't follow what I knew to be right. I listened to my senior pastor. I listened to what I felt were the parents in the church judging me, and I gave in, and you know, because I had parented really consistent with my gut for 15 years.
Yeah.
But Sharon, there was that point where I left it.
Yeah.
I stopped.
Yeah.
And I listened to the higher ups. I gave in to the pressure, and I changed as a dad, and they smelled it. Your kids know.
Yes.
When they smell, they got this 6th sense. They know the second that you do something that's not consistent with your personality. My sons smelled it, and they went for blood. They did.
Yeah.
And there was 2 of them. They were super close in age, 17 months. And they both, remember, they were doing the basketball thing and getting all popular and doing that whole, you know, and they just, and it just became a thing. So did I feel guilty for years? Yes, but in a very general way.
Yeah.
It wasn't until reliving it, talking about it, writing scenes, talking to them over and over and over, that I started to put the narrative together. Where did I lose my way, and what mistakes did I made? So I guess maybe I'm not such an asshole. Maybe I just say it took me 10 years.
It just took me
or
10 years.
15 years really to realize my mistakes and to truly feel bad about it. You know, so.
And to open and grow and see it for what it really is. You know what I mean? That was the 10 years was the growth. Okay. I know for a fact and that with Erica and Lewis, Erica's my sister that's lost the 2 boys. And one of the things that was evidently clear was that the 2 of them, as husband and wife, when they looked at each other during this experience, all they could see was the pain. I can only imagine that all you saw on Joyce's face was this pain. But my friend, when she looked back at you, all she saw was the pain. How did you guys help each other? How did you support each other during that process?
You know, we did. we did succeed at staying
Mhm.
together at for the most part being there for each other, but I gotta admit we gave each other a lot of space.
Yeah.
I I turned inward. I started to spend a lot of time alone. I started to hike for long periods of time. Got a camper van, started to spend time in the mountains. I just wanted to be, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want
Yeah.
therapy. I didn't want to, I mean, I talked to Joyce some, but I didn't want to commiserate with friends. Felt like I had run off my friends. It just, it's too much. I'm sure grievers feel like that. I want to talk
Yeah.
about it all the time. They're like, your friends just get tired of it. Yes, you
Yes.
can hire a therapist. You can hire Sharon Brubaker to listen. And Joyce did hire you to listen. Okay, fair enough. And amen. I did some talking too, but I turned inward. Joyce turned to her friends. She turned to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
She turned, but she kind of turned a little bit inward too.
Yeah.
She did feel like some friends were not there for her, or just weren't very good. She became an expert in Ecclesiastes, one of the most, you know, what's the right word? I know there's a word. Oh, I can't think of the word. Just that for a griever, there's no book like Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the realest book. It's no sugarcoating,
Yeah.
no just me. It's just real. It's right
Yeah.
there. And of course, Job and Proverbs,
Right.
Psalms. I mean, Psalms, Job, and Proverbs. Those are our three books. They became
Yeah.
our three books. She would go to
Yeah.
Ventura Beach. She would just sit there and read. I would read Ecclesiastes. She'd show me a verse. I'd show her a verse. It was the only part of the Bible we could open. It was Ecclesiastes, Job, and Psalms. And we hung on those for I don't know, years. But we did stick with each other. We kept talking. We would watch Grey's Anatomy. We would start, pause our shows.
Oh my gosh, that's the biggest grieving show I know out there.
Oh
It'll
my
just send
goodness,
you.
come on. And those songs would come on. They picked the best songs on the planet. There's a group called Sleeping at Last, which they I think Sleeping at Last was featured more on Grey's Anatomy than any other group. And there's a song called Saturn when Derek dies
When Derek dies.
that just will send me to the
You know,
darkest no, but the darkest, most beautiful place. And it's funny because crying, at least for me, even Christian music that makes me just weep, it's therapeutic. It just,
absolutely.
you say, well, Ken, why would you listen to a sad song when you're sad? I don't know, because it just makes me
It
feel
relieves
good.
the pressure. It relieves the pressure of everything that we got stuffing in. There's two more questions on this segment, and then I'm going to end it. Three more questions. Were there any ground rules for you and Joyce? Did you guys say, okay, we will absolutely not blame, or we're not going to point fingers, or you're allowed to say whatever you want? Were there any ground rules, or you guys just went with how you knew to be?
We kind of figured it,
Okay.
I don't know. We get weird when it gets that organized and that,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
just saying it
Yeah.
makes it weird to us, not
Yeah.
maybe not to others, but to even to ever to say it. I knew though, yeah, that's a non-starter. And when you kind of feel grace, you want to give grace, right? I
Yeah.
felt a little grace. She felt a little grace, and
Yeah.
that
Beautiful.
leads to a little more grace and a little more grace. And I'm not going to blame you. And you start without ever saying it, you kind of sense it, at least us. And so the graciousness that we give to each other has kind of been a lifelong thing. We're 41 years in, that's a long time. And you kind of,
Yeah.
if you can do things without ever saying them, to me, that's even better than
Yeah.
having to have someone else there, you know what I mean? So anyway,
Oh, yeah.
that's how we handled that.
And that one of the things Erica always says is that I wanted to be with Lewis because I felt that he was the only person that absolutely understood how bad I was feeling. Like she got you because
Yeah.
nobody else on the planet was right there.
Yeah.
How did you support the other two boys?
I don't have a good answer for that.
Okay.
One of my boys was a knucklehead during this time. He was still on opioids, and I only supported him by not by letting Joyce not let me strangle him, um, and kick him out of the house. um, and all three of my sons have turned around. By the way,
Oh yeah.
I have great relationships with them. I have great relationships with all of their wives. Um, And if you took a snapshot of my family today, I mean, you just wouldn't believe it. You just wouldn't
Yeah.
believe it.
Yeah.
And I don't say that because, wow, look at me. No.
Yeah.
Darkness can enter tomorrow.
Yes.
And I know that.
Yes.
It can enter in 1 minute.
Yes.
And if it enters my life, I think I will never go as dark as I did. Just because I don't know. When you've been to the darkness, you kind of, I don't know, you know that it's going to happen again. It's kind of how life is, right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
what? My wife's not going to die. I mean, yeah, maybe
Yeah.
I'll precede her, but
Yeah.
she's going to die. One of
Yeah.
our grandkids, it just could
Anything.
yeah, go down the list. You said there's
Yeah.
43.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
actually 143.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, there's a million in 43.
There's a million in 43 because there's layers to it, right? So it wasn't
Yeah.
only what happened with Lucas, it was happening to the boys, it was happening to Joyce,
Yeah.
it was happening to you, it was happening in the community, it was happening in your job. Like the grieving experiences just go, and none of us are getting out of here without fully going through it. Okay, I want to end on this question before we start the second segment. At some point, you picked up a pencil and you decided to write a letter to Luke. Tell us about that first letter.
You feel so estranged, so far. LA County is one of the most notorious jails in the world. It's a tough place, right? And once the anger subsides, it, the parental heart comes back to you, right?
Yeah.
The sensitivity, the warmth, the love. And it did. It came back, of course. And he and I had this moment, I won't get into, but this moment in prison when it was just the two of us in this visiting room where he completely melted down in front of me. And it was this father-son moment that you can never replicate. It was one of the most horrible, beautiful moments a father and son could ever have. And so, all of that, of course, started to melt eventually, the feelings I had of all those years of pain. But writing a letter, that I could do, right? I was sitting right here at this desk in this chair. And so the idea of pencil of using my keyboard, you put it the same keyboard, putting my fingers on it and dear Lucas, comma, right? And of course, at first it was the weather and the family.
Yeah.
But then I was like, I'm not writing those letters. I'm not just writing that letter. And I made some mistakes. I won't get into this letter I wrote, but I started to channel this TV show he and I used to always laugh about called Dexter, about the dark passenger. And I just got too graphic. I got way too graphic and I said too much. And the prison screener actually took that letter and put it into evidence against my own son. I almost can't even talk about this. I know. I can't even talk about it. It was such a bad idea. And I was so out of control with my emotions. I never should have written that letter. But anyway, it's not what you asked, right? But you did ask, yeah. And so I started to write real letters. And even I channeled David when he committed adultery with Bathsheba in this beautiful, really graphic, but beautiful way of not just David's mistake, but his recovery that Lucas got. He just said, Dad, I just didn't, that gave me such hope. I didn't know David had screwed up so bad. And yet he, he recovered in this incredible, and David is still David, even though he did this horrible mistake. And of course, to Lucas, it was, I've done as bad as David, and maybe I can have a life again. And as a dad, to write kind of a historical fictional letter, just the way I did it, to bring that kind of hope to my son when he's in that dark jail, that was pretty amazing.
Yeah. Thank you, Ken. Thank you for sharing. Friends, catch part 2. We're going to go deeper into the letter writing and the change in their relationship and the growth and the healing. And most importantly, the hope that they both found through writing the letters. Letters to my son in prison. See you guys at part 2.